Buckle up for a new episode of You and the Law Podcast, the one and only law enforcement podcast that's tackling critical policing and social justice issues and provides insights into the daily realities of policing with your host, Chief Virgil Green.
New video shows what happened when an innocent family got caught in Wednesday's North Minneapolis protest. That is Destiny Jackson trying to carry her baby boy to safety after a cloud of tear gas enveloped her SUV. In this since-deleted tweet, the Department of Homeland Security appeared to blame the family for endangering their 6 children before later faulting rioters instead. Today, the Jackson family told Reg Chapman they're just grateful for all the community support.
I was like, it was horrible. Last night's sleep was horrible.
Destiny Jackson says her entire family's having a hard time sleeping.
They pushed two of their twin-sized beds together and all slept like together.
She says they huddled together for support after experiencing the unthinkable. Video from Wednesday night shows the family's SUV's airbags deployed after a tear gas container was rolled underneath them.
There's kids in the car!
The vehicle engulfed in smoke as the kids tried to escape. Neighbors can be seen helping the little ones to safety inside a nearby house.
I'm very appreciative of everything that you guys did for us and forever and debt.
Yeah, they family now. We locked in. I'll definitely call them heroes.
Sean Jackson says help for his child was delayed because ICE agents would not let Minneapolis fire crews and EMS into the scene.
The operator, they told me to let you guys know for you guys to call an ambulance. I told them like it's an unconscious baby in the house. They still stood there.
The couple says it was Minneapolis police officers who ran to their aid.
And they came rushing in to help me with the baby, and I was very appreciative of that. If they did take him from me and give him to the fire department to make sure they was okay, and they also helped guide us out the house to be able to get into the ambulance.
Once at the hospital, the process of decontamination began.
Yes, it was very uncomfortable. I mean, like we were stripped out of all of our clothes into our birthday suit in front of strangers, and they were washing our bodies.
Back home now, they want the community to know how things can change in an instant when ICE agents are around.
And we just want you guys to know that this can happen to anybody, so just stay safe.
With photojournalist Chris Cruz, Reg Chapman, WCCO News.
Homeland Security says agents never targeted the Jacksons. The Jacksons say they're grateful for everyone who donated to a fund to help them get a new car and cover their medical bills.
Hey, welcome to another episode of You and the Law Podcast. I'm the host of the show, Chief Virgil Green. And as always, want to thank you for taking the time to tune in and join us tonight for a topic that is something that we are not hearing a lot of people talk about, but it is definitely impacting a lot of families across Minnesota, Minneapolis area, Twin Cities, as well as so many other communities around the country. So a knock on the door can mean many things, but for families, it carries fear and uncertainty. The ICE raids don't just disrupt lives in the moment. They leave lasting mental and emotional impacts on individuals, children, and entire communities, often long after the raids are over. In this episode of You and the Law Podcast, we're going to explore how immigration enforcement affects mental health, why this is a public health issue, and how communities are finding ways to heal. So this is You and the Law Podcast. So let's begin. And I've got a guest that I'm going to be bringing on the podcast tonight. And because he is Dr. Dante. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So, I reached out to you on TikTok, and I tell you, social media definitely connects us in ways that we never probably thought. And I saw your video about your experience with ICE in St. Louis Park, which is a suburb of Minneapolis. And I said, hey, I got to reach out to this guy and try to see if I can get him to come on the podcast, because you're in the mental health profession.
Yeah.
And so, it was really important to get you to come on, but let our listeners know about who you are and what you're doing in the Minneapolis Twin Cities areas, and also what was your experience with ICE?
Yeah, no, thanks again for the invite. So I'm Dr. Dante Assad Williams. I'm a mental health practitioner, also adjunct professor at the University of St. Thomas. So work predominantly with African-American communities and also folks part of the LGBTQ community. And then, work with trauma-informed care, and things like that. So, and also a social media influencer too as well. So
Yeah.
many hats.
Yeah,
But,
you got a pretty good following, man.
yeah, appreciate it. Yes, sticking to it. So shout out to all my followers and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, the experience was very, very startling, um, informative, right? Because I got to see what that was like firsthand, but also deeply concerning for several reasons. So I was last Friday, I was going to Home Depot in the St. Louis Park area. I was doing some odds and ends, and kind of getting some stuff from there. And before I was with my window was halfway down, I'm looking at my cell phone to send a text message. And a federal ICE agent, he caught me slipping. So I'll just name it like that. He caught me slipping. I was
okay.
I'm in St. Louis Park. I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Man, St. Louis Park is, I'm not from here. Like I told you, I've been up here for 3 years. And St. Louis Park is a suburb city where you just don't, you're surrounded. You're not really just like overly cautious about your surroundings.
Right.
It's not a very high crime suburb city
At all. So to your point, so it made it shocking. So, I hear this voice come up and say, what's your immigration status? And, it took me a little bit to kind of process that question because I've never been asked what my citizenship status is as a natural born United States citizen, right?
Yeah.
So it took me probably about a solid, like maybe 2 to 3 seconds to kind of process the question. Mind you, like I'm also startled because they have their assault rifle over their shoulder, finger on the outside part of the trigger, with a mask on, glasses, and asking me that question. Now, they're not necessarily thinking about the implications of that, and if I would have responded in a way that could have caused that to justifiably, in my case, because I don't know who you are, to escalate, right? So I abided by it. I said, I'm a United States citizen. He said, okay, thank you. And then walked off. And then go to the St. Louis Park Costco that's very, very close in that same parking lot to the Home Depot, and complete pandemonium. People were just in tears. People were crying. People were yelling, get the F out of here. We don't want you here. Those types of things. And that is interesting enough. Like they were trying to make a fast getaway, but if anybody's been to that St. Louis Park Costco, you're not getting out of that parking lot.
No, you're not.
So we're trying to get out of that. And then people are just, coming at them. And, the part that, so one, I was processing my own experience, but also processing the environment, observing what was happening for the general population. So anytime the population is that on edge and that scared and that worried and concerned, that is not a good recipe for things and how things can continue to pan out.
Yeah, you're right. And, I've been to that Costco's before several times. And it's not you got Costco's, you got Home Depot, and you got a lot of other restaurants and hotels in that area. And it's a pretty busy area. And, and so it makes you wonder, okay, so why was that area targeted? Because you kind of have to know your communities.
Yeah.
And not to say, St. Louis Park or Golden Valley or Plymouth they're exception to other areas, but you have to know that unless you're looking for a specific person, you got to know that person is there, or this is just a random, hey, we're just going to go over here and just randomly ask people if they're U.S. citizens. And, what kind of gets me, and especially being in law enforcement, you can, and not to sound stereotyping, but you can look at a person or you can hear a person speak and you can kind of automatically tell if that person is, if they're a U.S. citizen and that, or, if they're American or if they're from another country. And, I've heard people say, Dr. Dante, well, you just can't tell because of the way a person looks, and, I was in a store a couple of nights ago and there were some young ladies and they were speaking, either German or Russian or something. And the clerk said, oh, where are y'all from? And asked them they were like, oh no, we're from Germany. So, they were speaking in that language. And so, somebody like you and I, unless you're fluent in speaking German, and you spent some time in German, you're not going to be speaking German. You're going to be speaking just like,
Right.
normal English. So,
Right.
yeah. So, to walk up and ask you, hey, what's your citizen status?
Yep.
Definitely would catch a lot of people off guard. So did you see them going to other cars, approaching people, asking them or interacting with them?
Yeah, they scoured the parking lot and asked folks, but I couldn't help but to wonder, right? And we have to name it for what it is like, why me?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
why me? And I
yeah,
think, and I'm a person, I typically try to be, see things from different vantage points and perspectives, try to understand someone's decision making. But, you kind of have to look at disproportionately the number of people that they're detaining, right?
yeah,
And the demographics that they come from.
yeah.
So, I'm asking basically once he heard my accent, my English American Minnesotan accent,
Mhm.
then okay, you're good. So they did, but not necessarily. And to your point, from my vantage point of what I observed, there didn't seem to be necessarily like a strategy in terms of we're looking for XYZ person.
Yeah, yeah,
It's more like we're looking for persons.
yeah,
And that
yeah,
causes a great sense of
yeah.
alarm because everyone asks ourselves, like, well, what's to make it not be me next then?
Yeah. Well, and to your point, and you have some people who just by nature, everybody wants to cooperate,
Yeah.
but just by nature, just the asking of that question and just knowing how tense
Yep.
things are in the Minneapolis area, that you're going to have even the most educated person is going to say, why? They're going to ask that question. Why
Yep.
are you asking me that?
Yep.
And now you're going to have that ICE agent who is going to really ratchet up
Yep.
and to say, because I asked you, and now you're going to kind of go back and forth.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden you're being forced out of your car, or you being forced to the ground. If you're
Yep.
outside of your car, they don't know who you are. I mean, and this is the thing. And what really concerned me, Dr. Dante, and it's something I heard before the press conference a couple of days ago. I don't know if you saw the press conference with the police chiefs.
Yep.
I had already heard that several off-duty police officers especially in the Brooklyn Park area, had been pulled over by ICE, and it was not a pleasant experience. And they had to basically say, "I am a police officer."
Wow.
And those agents drove off as if like, "Oh wow, oh."
Yeah.
So, my question is, in our conversation tonight, as we talk about, the mental health aspect of it and how this is impacting communities, that these guys they don't know who they're approaching, especially you could be a senator, or you could be, the CEO of a Fortune 500 company.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden you have to tell this ICE agent who you are, and they may like, oh, okay, well, okay, whatever.
Yep.
But to know that police officers are being treated this way, and then you have to tell these ICE officers that you are one of them.
Yeah.
And they just look at you and get in the car and drive off.
Right.
And so that really creates another issue between local law enforcement and federal law enforcement and state law enforcement, because everybody's on the edge.
Yep.
And you don't know, hey, if I'm driving to the store, will I get pulled over?
Exactly.
That affects everybody's mental health.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, when in your encounter, how, as they walked away and you processed that and you kind of saw what was going on, what were some of the things that you were experiencing, or if you can speak on that?
Yeah, I'm a person that I've seen and experienced traumas, and so I'm a person I try to, just brush it off,
yeah,
keep it moving. And I had a hard time doing that because, one, it felt very disrespectful to my citizenship status.
Yeah,
It felt very disrespectful culturally, historically, right? As an African American man, I have my identity questioned. And then also, there was a part of me that is, they don't know that I'm, a doctor and, I'm
Yeah.
trained in like conflict resolution. They don't know that. So
Yeah.
I'm interacting with this person who has no idea about de-escalation skills. So now I'm horrified to now thinking about the fact of like, how many, now this is me complying. I wasn't that elevated. I did what, but the average person's like, screw you. Who are you? Why are you
Yeah.
asking the question? You have a mask on. I don't know who
Yeah.
you, right? You have no identification other than a vest and maybe a number, but this could be like anybody impersonating an ICE agent, right? So that's another component to that. So I was deeply horrified by that approach and grateful that it didn't necessarily escalate. And, I think to your point as well, from a mental health side and perspective, in terms of like local law enforcement, my heart goes out to y'all because there's a level of like, we should all be in this together. We're trying to protect and
Yeah.
serve the community. But with the ICE agents and this federal kind of administration kind of rhetoric and energy about it and the way that they're going about it, this philosophy is that is not a commonality or bond anymore. So
Correct.
now I can imagine, you're putting on your uniform as an officer, going out to protect that community, but yet having your own citizenship questioned by ICE agent randomly and disrespectfully.
Yeah.
So what does that do to your overall feeling of community and safety as an officer? Number one. Number two, what does that do to your work and how you show up doing your work?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and and another thing that really hasn't really been talked about, Dr. Dante, is the fact that, these officers who have been experiencing this are people of color.
Yep.
And so can you imagine you had this interaction with these ICE agents, and now all of a sudden, let's say you get called to a neighborhood where there's ICE agents at, and now you've got to do your job, but at the same time, you are probably wondering, okay, is this some of the people that stopped me and asked me about my status and knocked my phone out of my hand, didn't want me to record anything, but then when I had to tell them that I was a police officer, that they looked at me and was kind of like got in their cars and just drove off. Like,
wow,
who does that? And if that happened to an average citizen, they're going to probably be calling 911 saying, hey, there's somebody impersonating being a police officer.
Right.
So again, I think, there is a way to enforce the immigration laws, but now when you have communities on an edge to where it is impacting people's mental health more than anything. And as I shared with you before we came on the podcast, is that we're already dealing with a mental health system that is not, there's limited resources and people don't have healthcare insurance.
Yep.
So how are you going to seek out mental health, assistance if you don't have insurance, or you may be afraid to go and talk to somebody? So can you kind of speak on your experience in dealing with, even before this here, just the trauma of people saying, hey, I really don't want to talk to anybody, but at some point you really need to?
Yeah. There's so much stigma as it pertains to people just accessing mental health. So I think mental health now has become a general term that people now know about, right? And therapy and just knowing that that's there. But then there's another layer of cultural, I'll just call it like cultural acceptance, right? Of us as a society accepting that people utilize mental health services, and it's for any and everyone, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that, you have to be on the brink of psychosis or having a manic episode if you have bipolar or things like that. It could be literally as simple as what we're talking about, right? Like you're a Brooklyn Park police officer, you got stopped by a federal ICE agent in a very disrespectful way. Your humanity should be viewed and heard, right?
Yeah.
And this isn't just a thing where you should have to force yourself to just push it aside and then just keep going. Like, no, it's okay. Pause for a second. That was not okay. And you deserve to have support through that so you can still do your work and do your job and feel respected as you do it. So, I think also now with ICE and these types of things, people are scared to come actually in session now in person.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's something else. And it's good you brought that up, is that people are afraid to go to the store.
Right.
So if they're afraid to go to the store, you can only imagine, as you just mentioned, they're afraid to come to an office to have an in-person visit.
Correct.
And I know everybody got used to, when COVID happened. Now all of a sudden, everything was virtual. So obviously, there may be people can still have access to talking to somebody virtually, but and I wanted to say that this is a community that had just experienced what happened to Renee Good,
Yep.
what, a little over a week ago.
Yep.
But prior to that, this community had not really healed, or was still healing from what happened with George Floyd.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yep.
And so I know you were in Minneapolis when that happened, and kind of speak on that a little bit, of how that trauma impacted so many people, and what was the long-term impacts of how people in the community are still dealing with that.
Yeah, that's a great point. When a mass trauma like that occurs and you're exposed to, we were all exposed to that trauma, the 8 minutes over and over and over and over and over again, kids, adults, etc. There's the thought of it could be me. And now after that had occurred, we're trying to now have communities now start to reestablish trust.
Yeah.
Right? And now that is still trying to happen, right? And when there's distrust, you have increased anxiety, you have increase in depression, you have increase in just people maybe being triggered, in terms of like their own PTSD, like how that went down collectively for the entire metro area was a mass traumatic experience. But we don't process it or think about it like that because we just kind of force ourselves to move along. So you can imagine if you're at the epicenter of that community where there were riots happening, you don't know who's coming where. Then you have out of state people coming to elicit and to provoke things, right? So you don't know who's whom to trust in those types of contexts, and so your central nervous system is just off the charts, right? You can't calm down, relax. So now, just as we're coming out of that, out of it in terms of time period, duration, now we have this happen again. So it's compounding traumatic experiences that community is trying to navigate and work through. So now we have a complete shattering of trust. And here's the thing that makes it so, I think, even more so challenging, is that now it's not even state or local authorities, but now this is the federal, and the look and feel is totally different.
Totally different. Yeah.
Totally different look and feel.
Yeah. Well, and just looking back, just remembering the images of what happened back in, what was that, 2020 with George Floyd, that everything, like you said, it was local. You did have the National Guard; they were called up, but primarily it was local within Minneapolis Police Department. And as you said, there was already a lack of trust before that happened.
Yeah.
And then you had the issue with George Floyd happened. Then you had in Brooklyn Center, Dante Wright.
Yep.
That happened. And those were pretty close to each other. And so, you had a community who was wanting to heal, but there was still that trauma of just what we all witnessed for almost 9 minutes.
Yeah.
And I've had the pleasure of meeting the former police chief Arredondo, who really stood up and did the right thing, as well as so many other people.
Yeah.
But again, now here, some 5 years later, this is happening, and it's people are smart. They know it's targeted.
Exactly.
And especially to the Somali community, to the Latino community. And now it's like, no matter what you look like or what race you are, you're going to be targeted.
Yeah.
And so people are living in that fear, and that fear, like you said, increases anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting enough, I was looking up some research. So for a person that has a family member that's detained, it's associated between 2 to 3 times higher in terms of experiencing depressive symptoms and anxiety-based symptoms. Just even secondarily, just knowing that you have a family member that's being detained by ICE.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and just like the video that I showed, with the opening of the podcast, the family in North Minneapolis who had left the basketball game, trying to make it home, went by a store. Now they're caught up in the middle of the chaos that's going on. And there's flashbangs that are being thrown out of the car. Now their car is being, pretty much destroyed. And what really got me, Dr. Dante, is when you found out that a 6-month-old baby lost consciousness and stopped breathing. You had the ICE agents who were not trying to allow medical first responders to get to the baby. And you can see in the video how they were just standoff. Minneapolis police officers came in, they brought in the fire department, they brought in other medical personnel. That just kind of gets me, at the end of the day, where's the humanity in this here? Where you are, even if you're not even a parent, you're a person.
Yeah.
How do you stand there and hear the pleas of a father and a mother saying that we have a 6-month-old baby who is not breathing?
Yeah.
How do you live with yourself? And I think, and now that just heightened everybody's issues with what's going on after what happened with Renee Good. There's a 6-month-old who could have died.
Yeah.
And now you got people who are saying, well, it's their fault. They drove into the area. No, they're trying to get home. So, and now here's a family who their lives have been forever changed. And so can you kind of speak on some of the trauma that not just that family, but others will have to deal with? And what are some of the things that you, as a mental health professional person, would recommend that they do?
Yeah. So those are significant, like, we'll just call it vicarious, but not even vicarious. They're like, these are direct traumas, right? Like just being in the area, in the vicinity is a vicarious trauma that they're going through. So, one, for a 6-month-old to experience that type of trauma, my hope and prayer is nothing doesn't happen. Although it wouldn't be far-fetched to know that there's some probably long-term or at least intermediate term effects on that. And so for there not to be a accountability of, we messed up in that area, we should have done XYZ to protect our citizens, to protect our young, we end up victimizing people that are literally just trying to live their lives, right? And so, in terms of interventions and strategies, obviously therapy is a great component to that, but we also know there's barriers to that. So it's critical in today's time right now, going through these things, to build community with each other and to have that community in a way where there's a protocol of acceptance of, we're going to accept each other, we're going to and process through what this is how this is happening, how it's impacting us. Because what makes and I can't imagine what that family was going through. What makes it so hard and makes it so challenging is that the idea of justice now is completely distorted and destroyed and warped. Basically, they didn't do anything wrong. They were living their lives. Yet you blame me for your approach. Right? So now this starts to then build this even heightened sense of distrust. And now it starts to build this heightened sense of, we can't protect our children. We can't protect our kids. And no parent wants to feel that feeling. So I'm sure they're not sleeping. I'm sure they're having a difficult time just, with the flashbacks of what could have happened. So I think building community where your perspectives and viewpoints and experiences are validated and you are consistently checking in with one another is critical. I also think, I think this is where the conversation could be helpful in terms of restoring and kind of creating bridges between local law enforcement and citizens. Is that we, we're doing right now, we're seeing this, and we're not okay with this approach. This is not how this should be going down. It's not how this should be happening. That within itself, we call it a corrective experience in psychology, where it can be a corrective experience of like, oh wow, they actually understand and see my perspectives, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have someone who's in charge of making sure people are safe and things like that, be able to talk to them and say, I see your vantage point and perspective, and we're advocating against it.
Yeah.
That itself can be a helpful piece. So restoring the narrative back of of being blamed as the victim to being, like you were done wrong in this situation and context, and we see you and we see that. That within itself can be helpful. And there's different things too as well, like even just simple things like mindfulness meditation types of stuff that people can do. Anytime that someone can try to check out of this, and I try to stay abreast of what's happening, and there's so much happening. And
it is daily.
Right? It's like almost moment by moment, by the hour. It's like what now? Right? So as Minnesotans collectively, right, we're all on edge. And I think even acknowledging and naming this, like, yes, we know it's targeted.
Yeah.
Now, we can also have people from all perspectives and walks of life and nationalities and races and religious affiliations, etc., come together to say that we see this is not right. This is not what we want in our Minnesota.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, hey, Dr. Dante, I want to remind those who just now tuning into the podcast that we got on Dr. Dante Williams, who is a mental health professional in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And tonight, we're talking about, the tragic scenes or images that we've seen throughout the Minneapolis Twin Cities area. And so, we're talking about living in the shadows of the ICE raids and the hidden mental health crises. And so if you got any questions, put them in the chat. We'll get to those throughout the podcast. But Dr. Dante, I want to pull up your TikTok video and show that a little bit and get your perspective on what you recorded. And you've already kind of talked about that experience a little bit, but I want to show this a little bit. So hopefully it fits into the screen, right? Because oftentimes, TikTok videos, they have a weird way of coming up. So, but I want to play a little bit of this for the audience for them to see your experience and to hear the people who were shopping, what they were saying to the ICE agents.
Yeah.
So hold on.
For humanity, get out of here. Nobody wants you here. Get out of here. This is private property. Get out.
Hey everybody, Dr. Dante here. I had a run-in with ICE. I just kind of want to talk about that from my perspective as a mental health professional. So basically I was at the Home Depot in St. Louis Park, and then I later went to the Costco in St. Louis Park. Pulled into the parking lot. My window was halfway down. I was looking at my phone. I was about to walk out. Then about 4 unmarked SUVs pulled up to the front of the building. ICE people pulled out and then started scouring the parking lot. Gentleman walked up to me armed. He had this assault rifle over him. Finger was on the outside of the trigger with his mask on. Then he said to me, what's your citizenship status? Listen and comply. And I got to tell you, I've seen some things in my life, some traumas and things, but that was extremely frightening and scary, even for me, right, as a citizen. And I want to talk about the mental health component. I'm less concerned about people's political perspectives. I see a lot of folks online with a variety of perspectives, so I don't want to get into that part. But I do want to hone in on what does this do to citizens in Minnesota, right? Let's just call this for what it is. It wasn't typical for like an interaction with police that I've had or any other policing authority here in the state, whether it be state patrol, sheriff's department, etc. No ID, walks up to me without any question at all. And the piece that, that was deeply concerning is you're armed. Now, mind you, and also my condolences go out to Renee Good's family and her and just that horrible, horrible, horrible tragedy and loss. So that just happened. And so people are on edge. And I don't really hear a response from, ICE or whatever in terms of their approach. People are on edge, and not only on edge in terms of ICE and other policing authorities here in the state, with each other. So I'm kind of shaken up at this point because I'm like, dang, I mean, you can ask me questions, but you're armed and you got your finger on your trigger. So from that point, I go run my errand into Home Depot, and then I go drive to Costco to grab a couple things. And again, they're swarming Costco. And when I tell you, I'm going to put a video here. When I tell you that people are on edge, this is St. Louis Park, okay? Predominantly affluent area, neighborhood. People are frightened. People are scared, and people are tired. People were just yelling, screaming. They're upset. Everybody's got their camera phones out at this point. And I will be honest. There was a level of antagonizing that I did notice for some of those people that are affiliated with ICE. My thing is that where does the de-escalation skill start to come into play? How do you do your job and your role? Again, I'm less concerned about the political perspective, but how do you do your job and your role while also de-escalating things? They're elevated and the citizens are elevated. That is not a good combination. This is coming from me as Dr. Dante. I'm watching and observing people crying. I'm seeing white women crying. I'm seeing people of all ethnicities deeply disturbed by their mere presence. Now, it's not to say that, and what am I deeply concerned and afraid about, is that tensions are going to continue to escalate. So at this point, we have to explain to our kids what is actually happening and ways that they can protect themselves. The first thing I told my son after it happened to me was like, you have to keep your passport on you and stay at the house. Don't go into these public settings and public.
Wow. That was pretty powerful.
Yeah.
I know, you recorded it, you lived it. And I know there's a lot of people who have viewed that on your TikTok page. What kind of response have you gotten from people when you posted that video on your TikTok page?
Yeah, people were horrified. People were horrified from people in Canada. I've had folks from Ireland reaching out.
Oh, wow.
All over the globe, and then different states as well. They are horrified of it. And that was an 8-minute video. And people sit and watch that entire 8-minute video of me explaining that experience.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people say that as they were watching the video, their stomach started to turn. They started to feel themselves like this could happen to me and my sons. Right?
Yeah.
So it made things very real and very practical. And I try to be a law-abiding citizen as much as I can. And so for me, just living life, and I deal with trauma work and different things like that, just trying to help people and heal from those types of things. And so for me to be approached that way and to see what I was seeing, the way that I was seeing it, it was deeply alarming. And so also folks started to talk about just their experiences with federal ICE agents as well, and echoing the same sentiments.
Yeah.
And all in all, across all the platforms, this because I think that the video on Facebook hit like 1.3 million views so far.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it just blew up, which I'm appreciative of the platform. The platform's pushing that out to get the message across to people.
Yeah.
And there's a part where a lot of folks were like, I didn't necessarily consider the mental health part because we were so caught into just the interaction.
Yeah.
ICE.
Yeah. Well, and that's the piece that, since this has been going on, especially after, the shooting of Renee Good, for me being in this profession, but also, having this podcast, is that I'm not hearing people talk about the mental health piece of what people are dealing with.
Yeah.
When you have kids who are being taken out of school, or you've got ICE agents showing up at schools, getting into confrontation with teachers and other faculty at schools, the mental health of what people are experiencing is almost kind of like it's over here.
Yeah.
But it's something that we need to talk about because people are experiencing that. And, just kind of go back to Renee Goods. She had kids. Now all of a sudden her kids are unless that family is keeping them away from social media and TV,
Yeah.
they saw the image of their mother's car and saw somebody shoot and kill their mother.
Mm.
How do you will never get that out of your mind.
No.
And how is society, how are we going to say, okay, this is the people that were responsible for it, but now you're going to say, well, if she hadn't have done this, then she would still be here today.
Yeah. Mm.
You know, and and as you mentioned in your video, you had, you know, I mean, I've been to that area quite a bit, and you see a lot of professional people, a lot of retired people, people going into shopping. But now that experience going to Costco's has definitely had an impact on you, has an impact on everybody. It
Yep.
whether it was Costco's or Home Depot.
Yep.
So, and as we're sitting here talking, they've kind of targeted Home Depots.
Yep.
And that Home Depot is surrounded by a lot of other businesses and restaurants where other Home Depots are not.
Yep.
And so I don't know if that was, hey, let's hit up this Home Depot over here because we haven't. But now one place I have not seen or seen any videos is Menards. That's a pretty large. There's a lot of Menards around. I have not seen or any videos of ICE agents approaching being in Menards parking lot.
Yep. A part of me wonders, what are the reasons for that, right?
And just like with the St. Louis Park store, and as you mentioned, it's a pretty affluent area. Now, I will say, I have not seen any videos of them going to Edina, Eden Prairie.
Exactly. Exactly.
I have not seen them going to Wayzata. I have not seen them if there are these type of stores in those suburb cities.
Yep.
So you kind of have to know, hey, okay, let's stay away from over there, but we can go over here.
Yes.
They really didn't know that St. Louis Park. They probably figured out, okay, well, now St. Louis Park does have a Somali mayor, the first Somali mayor in the history of Minnesota, and the first Somali mayor in the United States. And I've met her, real nice young lady.
Yep.
So again, it makes you wonder why these things are happening, and the fact that you are now traumatizing people who would never have any kind of encounter with an ICE agent.
Yeah.
Patrol agent.
Yeah. And a part of me, I'm cynical sometimes, and maybe I'm cynical just because of my experience, but a part of me almost feels like that the intended goal is to kind of create this tension in this kind of, I'll just name it for what I feel like it is a fear almost.
Yeah, right? You're right. You're right.
Because again, my interactions with local enforcement, it's generally to inquire what's happening and to de-escalate, right?
Yeah.
But with that, it was very, very assertive, aggressive, and demanding.
Yeah.
And without really wasn't really much logical questioning to things. It's just like, this is what we want, this is what we're doing, so on and so forth. And so they're just going around, now they're trying to kind of cloak themselves within the general population. That makes it particularly distressing now, right? Because now you can't even identify that's who they are. It could be some random person pretending to impersonate themselves as an ICE agent.
Yeah.
It could be human trafficking, right? For all you know. Right?
Yeah. Well, and before all this here, Dr. Dante, there was already a fear in the Latino community with law enforcement. Especially in states like Oklahoma, Texas, other parts of the country where, people have pretended to be law enforcement or, border patrol agents and show up at people's houses and they, pretty much kidnap them and, they're taking their money. And now, we've tried to do, put out a lot of message in that community, not to fear the police, because now you got people who are victims of crimes.
Yep, they're not reporting it.
And they're not reporting it because, and then they find out, well, that wasn't an actual real police officer. So, now it's like, okay, who do you tell who's good and who's bad?
Yeah.
And in this situation, I think, even with the press conference that came out the other day with the police chiefs about, how this is impacting, police officers who are off duty, who are just driving to work, or who are driving to work, or maybe getting off of work. Now they're being stopped and being, questioned about who they are.
Yeah.
And, again, it's, the mental health piece of this here is so important. And, hopefully more people will really start talking about this here. And even on the federal level, because like, as you just mentioned, Dr. Dante, the de-escalation of how no other police department is bringing this much chaos.
No.
And what are you going to do to say, okay, we are harming a community?
Correct.
That typically we're not trying to do this, but this is what's happening. And you have to own up to that ownership and accountability.
Yep. And, here's the thing. I think that there's a big push for using fraud in Minnesota as a justification for this type of aggressive approach. But here's the thing. If we were to count the unaccounted, like intangible cost for law enforcement in Minnesota collectively of the cost that ICE in their approach is doing against your actual day-to-day functions, you would see that number is quite large, right? But that's not getting talked about, because for you all as law enforcement to now have to do double efforts if you're doing an investigation, trying to understand something, to do double efforts now you have to even go as far as to say, well, what are these ICE agents doing while they're here?
Yeah.
Off duty, right? Because if they're so brazen and emboldened to behave that way with their uniform out, what is their conduct like outside of that? And that's the part that also concerns me, is that since you're not accountable while you have that on, what does that look like when you're off?
Yeah. It's good you bring that up, because, and just as we're sitting here talking about this, you have to just face reality. I mean, just be, call it out for what it is. Let's say you take that off and you got to go to a restaurant, you got to go eat, you got to do things. Now, all of a sudden you are integrating yourself in the community, but you don't have this, ICE jacket on, or you don't have the badge, you don't have none of these things, and you're just like another citizen. But now, how do you live? And I guess, how do you live with yourself? Being here, it is for 10 hours, you've been out here terrorizing, creating chaos in the community. And then all of a sudden you find yourself going to a restaurant and eating, and you're just fitting in with everybody else. And nobody knows who you are, but you do. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of people will have to answer to the man above for the things that you have done. And I just don't see how people can live with this. And I know, I don't know if you know this, Dr. Dante, and those who are listening, but, ICE put out a $50,000 recruitment. And so there was a $50,000 to become an ICE agent.
Wow.
So that's a lot of money.
It is.
Now you got people questioning, what are they, what are their backgrounds? Are they coming from law enforcement? Are they coming from military? Who are these people? What kind of training have they had? And when you talk about sending, now there's supposed to be over 3,000, federal agents in the Minneapolis, Twin Cities area, or the state of Minnesota. You have to go through a pretty extensive federal training. And you got people who are questioning that, because at the end of the day, I think there would still be protesting, but I don't think it would be to the level of people who are just fed up, and they are right there in the face of these agents, causing these agents to use chemical agents to disperse the crowd. But again, there has to be a better way in handling this here, especially from the mental health uh, piece of it, because this is, to me, I'm not you're the mental health professional. You tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Mm.
I think this is a mental health crisis.
Oh, 100%.
In something that is probably on that level of what happened after what happened with George Floyd. The
Yeah,
trauma there.
that's a great point. One of the things that concern me so much about their approach, and what concerns me overall, thematically of our experience with ICE currently, is that, the George Floyd situation was kind of quarantined to the South Minneapolis area for the most part.
Yeah.
And I think one of the differences now is that these people are going throughout all of the metro area doing this.
Yeah.
And it's almost like guerrilla kind of like things that are just
Warfare.
kind of swooping in and doing that, right?
Yeah.
And the question I always ask myself is like, what's the balance between anarchy and the balance between tyranny?
Yeah.
Right. And we're seeing the scale kind of tip more towards tyranny. And as American people, we are very privy to what that looks like historically, which is why our country was found the way that it was, right?
Yeah.
At least in theoretical, right?
Yeah.
How it actually showed up, maybe not, but theoretically, right?
Well, and not to cut you off, Dr. Dante, but it kind of reminds you, you kind of have to put this back into what, we saw during the civil rights era.
Yep.
Where you had, wasn't a federal government, but you had state and county law enforcement and municipal law enforcement treating Black people inhumane ways with dogs, with water hoses, and doing all these other things just because people wanted to go register to vote.
Yep.
And now here we are, some 50-something years later, and we just celebrated Dr. King's 97th birthday.
Yep.
And it was like, and what gets me is that people will quote Dr. King and bring up his name. And it's like, come on. I mean, this man, you're just doing it because you're trying to play into people's, people's minds or whatever.
Yeah.
But some of the images that we're seeing now, it takes us back to Bloody Sunday, what took place back in during that civil rights era.
Yeah. There's a psychological function because we're watching this and we're like, how can you, that question I ask myself too. It's like, how can you live with yourself, or how can you be affiliated with an organization that is doing this and they haven't brought justice yet, right? That's that question.
Yeah.
But cognitive dissonance happens, which simply is this: is that there's a particular distressing event that I have either been witness to or have been a part of, and then I distance myself from that. So there's like a level of justification that they create to say, like, well, this is for the common. And you hear this, those that maybe are supporting their approach. You hear like, well, this is to get us to the enzu amin, right? Like get us to our point where we need to keep our country safe. So it justifies how they're doing it, but there's a deep level of having to ignore strategically someone's humanity. You dehumanize groups of people in order to justify that behavior, right?
Yeah.
And then what ends up happening is this kind of innocent bystander, this bystander effect that happens, where now people are watching and observing it, and someone's like, well, someone's going to hopefully say something because this is so wrong. But what ends up happening is typically within a bystander effect, no one says anything. And so I would say that for the communities that if you see something is wrong, say something so everyone else collectively can do it. Because what's going to end up happening, if folks aren't careful, is that this will start to become normal. This will start to become the new norm.
Yeah, you're right about that. Hey, Dr. Dante, I just want to remind those who are just now tuning into the podcast that tonight's guest is Dr. Dante Williams. He's a mental health professional in the Minneapolis Twin Cities area. He's also a professor at St. Thomas?
Oh, University of St. Thomas, yeah.
Yeah. And so tonight, we're talking about, pull this back up on the screen, living in the shadows of the ICE raids and the hidden mental health crises. And it's something that you know, we have not seen a lot of people really talking about it, not even in local news media. I think some people have, but I think it was just really important to have this conversation about the mental health of what people are experiencing. Yeah. And so I've got another video that I want to show, another news clip, local news clip. And this is about a 12-year-old boy who was detained. And now, Dr. Dante, and to those who are listening, he was taken out of school, and now he's at a detention camp in San Antonio, Texas. So let's we'll watch this here, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
5 neighbors in St. Paul are concerned after they say federal agents raided a home on their street without a warrant and took away 6 people.
They say agents even hauled off a 12-year-old boy who is now at an immigration center in Texas. Fox 9's Mike Manzoni is live in St. Paul tonight. Mike, several cameras inside the home captured what happened.
Yeah, agents stormed in and then searched the house room by room. The neighbors say that the agents told them it had something to do with a narcotics investigation, but the neighbors are suspicious because of something caught on camera just moments before that raid.
They started banging the door, kicked the door in.
This video shows the moment federal agents stormed into a house in St. Paul on Thursday. It happened on Nevada Avenue East around 5 o'clock. Neighbor Jeffrey Jones watched it all unfold.
It's different when it hits so close to home, you know, right next door to you, and actually having a relationship with these people.
In the video, you see a woman holding an infant. Neighbors say agents let her and the baby stay, but they took everyone else, including a 12-year-old boy.
She asked for the warrant. They said they had one, but they never showed it to her.
Family friend Francis Clatworthy tried to pick up the boy from a Twin Cities federal building on Friday, but had no luck.
They say that they sent him to San Antonio.
Neighbors say agents told them it was all part of a narcotics investigation and had nothing to do with immigration. But Sean Piet is suspicious because this video from his outdoor camera shows someone dropping off a package just minutes before the raid.
Federal agents inside were telling him there's drugs in it, and if no one inside at the time claimed that package, that they were going to take everybody in the house.
And one other thing struck them as odd. This warrant from a state, not a federal court, showed up on the doorstep the day after the raid. But it does not look exactly like this sample warrant that a state court spokesman sent us. It doesn't have a case number or a file stamp, and there's no record that agents ever filed it, though they do have 10 days to do that.
This morning they dropped it off here. The piece of paper that said that they had a warrant to search the house.
And she says the family came here from Venezuela 3 years ago and added that the adults all have work permits as well as real IDs. We, of course, reached out to federal officials for more information, but haven't heard back yet. We're live in St. Paul. Mike Manzoni, Fox 9.
You know, Dr. Dante, you know, one of the reasons I wanted to show that clip is because the 12-year-old. Yeah. You've got a 12-year-old who was in school one day, and now he, for whatever reason, is taken halfway across the country and probably is not getting any kind of, you know, they're not sending him to school. He's in some kind of detention camp with other kids. And it's like, okay, why would you not leave the 12-year-old? I mean, if you're there for the adults, why take a 12-year-old? But then to now all of a sudden within a very within 24 to 48 hours, he's on a bus with a whole lot of other people going to a whole nother part of the country in Texas. How can you kind of speak on some of the things that this 12-year-old may be experiencing?
So during that developmental time period, there still is a connection and attachment to family. So you have now stripped them of that justifiable right. Every human being goes through that time where they are depending on their loved ones as support. You've now removed them from that.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, secondly, they're now not just traveled to brought, but you've been detained. You no longer have freedom. So now you didn't do anything wrong, but now you're being detained and treated as if you did. So what does that start to tell that person, that 12-year-old in their head about themselves and about people around them and adults?
Yeah.
Is that justice is not a real thing anymore, and I can't feel safe anymore. So let's say they get back here, and I hope they do. They get back here. One, the amount of time they have spent out of school is now set them back severely set them back. Okay.
Yeah.
Now you have your classmates that are like, where is so-and-so? And then they hear about this and they go, oh my God, he was here one day. Now he's gone to tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that within themselves, again, trauma is vicarious. Trauma moves. Trauma goes from one person to the next when one thing happens.
Mm-hmm.
So now, okay, now you also have, now when they get there, what is their experience like? Do they even know that their rights and how to advocate for themselves? Do they know when and how they're getting back?
Yeah.
So they're in constant state of fear, worry, and anxiety. So even if they did get back and got reunited, so on and so forth, their mindset and their body will no longer be the same that it was before. It has been drastically altered, and that will be years of therapy that they would need to do in conjunction to some sort of, hopefully, like damages of some sort of some acknowledgement or recognition of like that's not okay. So again, the approach itself causes and continues to increase mental health issues throughout all of our communities.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you just mentioned something that, is real important. Here's a kid who, like I said, one day life is great. You're in school, having fun with your friends, having fun with your families. Now you're in a whole different environment. But let's say they decide, okay, we're going to send you back home. How do you now, does his family know, or will somebody say, we need to get you some type of therapy, or we need to get you, definitely some mental health counseling?
Yeah.
Who's going to pay for that? Is the federal government going to pay for it? Are they going to say, well, state, you got to pay for it, or mom and dad, you got to pay for it?
Exactly.
Because this is something that is really, it's almost kind of like the pandemic.
Yep.
The pandemic changed the way we lived. It changed everything.
Yep.
And we're still in, pre-COVID, still, dealing with those changes. And now all of a sudden, here is something that is, to me, is on that level, because it is just ripping families apart, and especially the kids.
Yeah.
And now, you got a 5-year-old that we saw in the first video that was used. They're saying was used, and now they're saying he wasn't used to lure somebody out of the house. Where's that 5-year-old at?
Right.
I've got a grandson that's 5 and he's in daycare.
Yep.
So, unless you're in pre-K or Head Start or something, you're in a daycare. How is the government going to take care of you? And now you don't have your family, you don't have your mother, you don't have your father, but you're with total strangers. And so kind of speak on that part, if you can, just of how do kids you can't get adjusted to that.
Right.
What are some of the things that you as a mental health professional would sit down and talk to a family and work with that family?
Yeah. I think that the biggest piece is helping them understand that what happened to them should not have happened, and it was wrong and horrible, right?
Yeah.
Like that, number one, because anytime that you have infrastructures or hierarchies, right? So you have a federal government that's giving messaging. That messaging has impact, right?
Yeah.
You see them successfully and unsuccessfully, but successfully for their intended audience, successfully altering the narrative of what's taking place and what's happening. Even with Renee Good, we obviously know what happened, but they tried to change the narrative of what actually took place. So that can cause a deep sense of distress, right? That can cause someone to actually go into psychosis, actually, if that happens too much. But where their reality is at question. They start questioning, like, is it me? Because that's the goal, is to make it blame the individual, so they don't, the institution, federal government, etc., do not have to be culpable for what they are doing.
Yeah.
Right. So they change the narratives by naming people as criminals who aren't really criminals. Most immigrants are asylum seekers who are just trying to live a life.
Live a better life. Yeah.
It's exactly what that is. You got people getting stopped and arrested and detained who are just literally, they're on the job working. They're not committing a crime. They're working their job.
Yeah. Well, that actually happened in St. Paul, where I want to say, I think he worked for the Public Works Department.
Yep.
Who was stopped and detained and deported. He had all of his going through whatever the federal government is asking you for, your immigration status. People know, hey, I've got to go through these steps. So you got people who are following the letter of the law, but now all of a sudden that's just being changed in the middle of what they're trying to do.
Yep.
And, again, I've seen, young Somali women who have been, dealt with ICE in a inhumane way. I've seen, we saw a video of a lady who was disabled, trying to go to a doctor, who was pulled out of a car, and she was, didn't get the medical treatment that she needed, but she was later released, and she's an American citizen.
Yeah. Wow. So,
doctor, we can go on and on about the horrifying stories and images that you've seen, and it's flooded on TikTok.
Yep.
It is so much.
Yep.
And I want to ask you this question: are we too consumed with social media, with what we're seeing, especially on TikTok? I don't see a lot on Facebook, but I definitely see a lot of it on that platform of TikTok.
Yeah.
Do people need to kind of pull themselves away from that because it's going to have some kind of impact on you, but at the same time, people want to be informed?
Yeah. So that's a great point. So what's the balance, right? What's the ratio?
Yeah.
And that's where the individual has to start to be aware of checking in with themselves and saying, how am I actually doing and feeling right now? Like, if I sit for 4 hours, 5 hours straight, and I listen and I watch and see what's happening, and the thing that makes it so distressing is that there's no relief of it. We're informed of ourselves of what's the ongoing, and then we catastrophize justifiably what can be worse. What's the next worst thing that's going to happen?
Exactly.
So I do think there's a level that we not irresponsibly check out, but to pause.
Yeah.
To pause for a moment to say, I got to still take care of myself, my life, my family, etc., and then resume back into it. But you have to have these pause moments, or else your body and mind, they're going to respond to the stimulus or the things that you expose to it, right?
Yeah.
Then what ends up happening is you start to see even more elevated levels of depression, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you're already depressed, right? Winter's already here. It's negative 43 outside.
Man, let's not talk about winter in Minnesota, man. I don't see. So, are you born and raised here in?
I am. I'm like, why am I here still?
Well, people, I never thought that I would be in Minnesota, especially growing up watching the Minnesota Vikings play outside and seeing all of that. And then all of a sudden, here I am in Minnesota, and I'm just like, oh, golly, I got to get back to Oklahoma. It gets cold there, but man, by the time the cold gets there, it's not as cold. You don't deal with the negative, like what is it supposed to be tomorrow, negative 35 or something. It's just like, but it's good that you bring that out, because people deal with weather. It impacts people's mental health.
For sure.
I remember going out to Portland some years ago at a conference and talking to people out there, because it rained so much out there, and the suicide rate it was high back then. And I was like, why? Because they said it rains so much, people don't get out, and people, experience mental health and they commit suicide.
Yeah.
Now here we are dealing with this here, and you can see that people don't deal with mental health, their crises, and they will result in a way to just checking out.
Yep. Yep. You start dissociating, and dissociation has a function, right? Dissociation is a protective mechanism for us to try to not have our entire like psyche or mind consumed with what's happening.
Yeah.
So we do this a lot. Or, in trauma work, there's a lot of people that are going to try to compartmentalize what is happening. Because again, I have to say this again, because I think this is the point, is that they're trying to make this seem like it's going to be normal. This is not normal.
Not normal. No,
this is not normal at all. And we need to continue to say that. This is not normal. This is not okay. It's not normal. So that's a big push to try to normalize this type of stuff. So I think,
no, go ahead. Well, I want to say this real quick. The one thing we don't see, what we're experiencing or people experiencing in Minnesota, people in Ukraine are not experiencing that, and they're in a war.
Correct.
Just kind of think about that for a moment, people.
Correct.
People in Ukraine and over in other countries where there's a war going on, they are not experiencing the level of what people are experiencing in Minnesota.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but that just popped. Yeah.
That's a great point. I mean, because think about it, there's something to be said about people trying to minimize this approach that they're taking. They're trying to minimize this as like, oh, just comply. That's not a thing, right? Like they're going to escalate even if you do comply, right? Because that's the justification and approach.
Yeah.
The messaging from the, not to be political, we have to be almost a certain degree. Like the messaging that we get from that is that it's immune. Whatever you do is immune. That's crazy when you think about the modeling that federal agents and state local agents are supposed to be doing for the community. How can someone comply to rules and laws when those who are enforcing it aren't conforming to the same rules and laws as well?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That's a significant thing that has to happen. Yeah. Right? We can't ask for compliance without modeling compliance. So now we have this cognitive dissonance that shows up for the population, and people who are in Minnesota are like, well, justice has not been served yet you want me to comply with you. It's a mismatch. That within itself is a distressing thought.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that now it's like, okay, why are you asking me about, my citizen status because I'm an American?
Right.
That in itself just really, and as you experienced, you experienced that. And I think the one thing, you mentioned how many, your video has gotten over, millions of views. People are all around the country will continue to see that.
Yep.
Did you expect anything like that to happen when you recorded that and put it up on TikTok?
Absolutely not. Absolutely
Okay.
not. I didn't at all. And especially because it was a long form. Like TikTok is not meant for 8-minute videos. That's like more or less like a YouTube type of deal.
Yeah.
But for TikTok of all applications to take it to 250,000 views, and then Facebook could take it to 1.3, 1.4 million views.
Oh, wow.
8 minutes. I think what that speaks to is the fact that, to your point, which is why I'm so appreciative of you bringing this topic up, is that people aren't taking like a moment to think, how is this short-term impacting my mental health and long-term impacting not just my mental health, but the communities, both local, state level, and then also nationally, because now other states in the country are now thinking about, we've also had our run-ins with this, and then what could come our way as well, right?
Yeah.
That's not to say how their tactics may kind of evolve.
Yeah.
They're so raising and rolling.
Yeah, well, you bring up a good point because, the economy now, you've got the mental health piece of what's going on.
Yep.
Now it's impacting the local economy, the small businesses who are closed or not, opening different hours. Now you've got, the stores or don't see the amount of people in the store shopping because people are fearing. Now you got people bringing them food to their home. Then you got kids who are not going to school. They're, learning virtually
Yep.
You know, and another piece of this is if this continues on into the summer, uh,
Yes. Yep.
things are going to change because I said this to somebody before. If this was not in winter, if this was in May or
Yeah.
June, I think we would be dealing with a whole set of different circumstances. And it would probably be a lot more violent than what it is. It's
Yeah.
wintertime. People know it's cold.
Yep.
Even in the cold weather, people are still out protesting, and some are doing it peaceful, some are not. But I think, Dr. Dante, we've got, you know, people from other countries who are coming here for sporting events. They
Yep.
got to be concerned about how they may be treated.
Yep.
So, and I think when this rises to the level where if the Olympics are canceled
Oh.
because of what is going on with the immigration,
Yep.
that right there will be devastating
Yep. Yep.
to the American economy and to so many cities.
Yeah.
Uh,
When you were describing just the summertime and the heat, we know that summertime and spring, we see elevations in crime, right?
yeah.
So the question then is that people don't forget this type of stuff, right? The rage and the outrage and the feelings of anger that just festers and builds,
Yeah.
and similar to a balloon that blows up, that blows up, that blows up. It has a point with which it is going to pop, and that's
Yeah.
why I even made the video to begin with of like I'm seeing what can happen if this does
Yeah.
not stop the way that it's going on. So
Yeah.
you have an increase just in local crime and different things like that. And now you throw on top of it the federal government and their approach of how they're doing these things.
Yeah.
It is a formula for something that is going to be extremely, extremely alarming and dangerous if something's not done.
Yeah. Well, and just to put this piece in there, once these things are over with, and ICE says and Border Patrol says, "Hey, we're through with our operation in Minnesota." Now you leave, but you left the whole state traumatized.
Yes, exactly. They've made y'all's jobs even more harder now because unfortunately the general population is not distinguishing between federal ICE agents and local police. So now it's going to be even more heightened distrust that they created,
Yeah.
right? And then you just go, okay, well, hey, see you later, kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and I think that's why it's reckless. It's
Yeah.
reckless on how they're doing this because they're
Yeah.
trying to send a message, but they're doing it in a very, very
Right.
dangerous way.
It is. It is. Well, Dr. Dante, we went over a normal hour, but it's been a great conversation. And I have to, ask you this. I think this isn't something we can just have a one-off conversation about.
Yeah.
And I wanted, I would like to get you to come back on to talk about this even much more deeper because it is so many things that have happened, will continue to happen. And I think just to continue to talk about the mental health piece of it, and I hope people will definitely, we have a lot of people listening, and I hope a lot more people will kind of tune in to be a part of this conversation because mental health is a very serious public health issue.
Yep.
And now we just added on the piece of children from the ages of, now we, a 6-month-old experienced trauma.
Yep.
That, everybody in that family experienced trauma.
Yep.
And, again, man, it is just so disturbing that nobody is saying, hey, we were wrong.
And people can't rest in their minds and in their bodies where trauma is also stored until justice happens.
Yeah.
And until recognition. And in my work doing trauma and things, the biggest piece that trauma survivors are asking for is an acknowledgement and recognition what took place and it not happening.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Well, and in just to kind of go back briefly, after George Floyd, there was so many healing, people, I heard it, when I came up here, healing circles and all these other different forms of getting people together. and now this is going to be added to that.
Yep.
So Dr. Dante, I definitely appreciate you responding back to me on TikTok, because I know you probably get a lot of inboxes or DMs and from people, but again, I really appreciate your speaking on the mental health profession about what you experienced and what people are experiencing. But I would definitely love to get you to come back on to talk about this here a little bit more in another episode, because again, I haven't seen a lot of people talking about it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, and I'm definitely open to that, and I appreciate you just pausing to say, like, that's a great point. We need to highlight this, right? Because it's definitely needed. So I appreciate your platform and introducing this conversation.
Yeah. So, Dr. Dante, for those who don't follow you on your social media, or how can people get in touch with you, and also services that you provide for mental health counseling?
Yeah, so you can find me. I'm on TikTok. So it's Dr. Dante _ Assad. And then I'm also on Facebook. Just type my name, Dante Williams. And then currently doing some therapy work as well at the African American Child Wellness Institute as well. I'm a postdoc there as well. So we do therapy for predominantly African American communities in the area and stuff. So, but yeah, feel free, check out my content. I have a plethora of
you do.
I cover everything on this, so I feel like sometimes. But.
Yeah. Well. Hopefully, you'll share this video or share some parts of this interview on your platform, because I think hopefully for those people who were not able to catch it live tonight, it'll definitely be on our YouTube channel. But again, I just think it is so important that we have this conversation, and I think at some point, Dr. Dante, I think the community needs to come together and have this as a much larger conversation about the mental health, because what's going on in the schools, what's going on in every aspect of communities has impacted so many people.
Yeah. And the cost to because the thing with my last point, if I may.
No, go ahead, man. We're not short on time. We're good. We're good.
We want to talk about fraud that's happening, of course, justifiably, right? And that stuff is terrible, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of, again, untangible cost when you think about mental health.
Yeah.
There's so much cost that's associated that is being wasted of the taxpayer dollar. From what is happening, just that one event alone with Renee Good has hundreds of millions of, if not billions of dollars worth of trauma-related, infrastructure-related costs associated with it. But that doesn't get talked about. So what mental health is so pervasive is that anytime that it involves a person of showing up into a space, the mind is there.
Yeah.
And anything that happens within that context, if it's trauma-related, so on and so forth, has a cost associated with it. Even though we're not adding that dollar, it's there. So when we put these preventative pieces in place, it can mitigate some of the costs, and not only just costs in terms of mental health, but also just physical health as well on the entire medical infrastructure. And then also in terms of local enforcement as well, there's a cost associated with mental health,
Yeah, it definitely is. It is. Well, Dr. Dante, I hate to wrap up this good conversation, man, but I know people are probably like, "Hey, man, when are these guys going to stop talking?" So, but again, sir, it's been a pleasure connecting with you. Appreciate your input from your lens as being in the mental health profession, and I definitely, like I said, get you to come back on and we'll talk more about this here, and obviously. Probably end up talking about some more disturbing things that probably will happen in the days and weeks to come. So, again, appreciate you for coming on, and want to remind those who, if you miss any parts of this podcast tonight, you can go to our YouTube channel and watch that episode, or you can go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and also go to our website, which is www.youandthelawpodcast.com. That's www.youandthelawpodcast.com. Click on all our social media handles. Follow, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Want to get those subscribers up, so it doesn't cost you anything to do that. So again, I appreciate everybody for tuning in tonight, and make sure you tune in next Thursday, because it's definitely going to be another informative topic on You and the Law podcast. But Dr. Dante, again, appreciate it, sir, and I'll definitely be in touch with you.
Yep, sounds good. Thank you so much, sir.
All right, welcome. Everybody have a good night.
That's a wrap on this episode of You and the Law podcast. We've got more eye-opening conversations and hard-hitting insights coming your way, so make sure you subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcast, and stay ready, because the next episode might just change the way you see law enforcement forever.